Here we go.
Good morning. Today is June the 28th, 2010. My name is Charles D. Hill. I go by the name of Big Don, and I am pretty much a lifelong resident of Beersheba Springs. I am sitting on the front porch today of my little business, which is called Don's Country Store, and I am in the company of Clopper Allman, his wife Joan, and Martha Bartles. And we are going to go over some of the things that I talked about at the Historical Society meeting on Saturday, and they thought that my information might be of interest to someone down the road somewhere, and I hope it is. The reason I live in Beersheba Springs is pretty simple. My grandfather came from Warren County up to Beersheba Springs in 1905, and he brought along with him some children, and then he had some more children, and his wife died, and then after she died, he remarried a hometown girl from over on Hills Creek in Warren County, and brought her up here to raise the children he had, and she bore him 8 more. So he had a total of 13 children. 2 died pretty much in infancy, but 11 of them lived into adult life, and some of them on into very old age. I had an uncle named Marshall Hill that lived to be 98 years old.
What was his name, Don?
His name was Ben Hill, my grandfather was, and in 1906 he liked Beersheba well enough that he bought a large parcel of land. He bought 1,000 acres for $1,000, and he bought this from some people whose last name was Schofter, Rudolph C. Schofter and Hersa N. Schofter. And by the time that he bought this land, they were living in Maryland. So I think most of this transaction was done through the U.S. mail. Here's a deed for that property, or a copy of, and it says that he bought a parcel that had 1,000 acres, more or less, and he bought it for $1,000. Now, $1,000 was a lot of money. It's dated, as I said, 1906, and it's registered out here in the Grundy County Courthouse on August the 24th, 1906. $1,000 was a lot of money, and 1,000 acres was a lot of land. Today, there's no way of knowing how valuable that would be. But my grandfather was a man who had vision, and he agreed to pay $100 down and $100 every 3 months, and apparently he did that because the land is still in our family, certain parts of it. And I happen to be the proud owner of about 71 or 72 acres of that property. My dad was born to my grandfather's second wife in 1920, right here in Beersheba Springs. They were...
His name?
His name was Richard Hill. They were having a high school down at he was born October the 2nd, and they were having high school down at the hotel at that time. Travel to Tracy City, where the county high school was not easy at that time, so they had high school locally. And my uncle Marshall, who lived to be 98 years old, I guess I'd have to say this, my dad's favorite brother and mine also, my favorite uncle. Marshall said that at that time that children had to work and then go to school if they had time. And he was working on October the 2nd, 1920, down at the entrance to the Shady Valley Nursery, up in the corner of that field, pulling fodder. And it was on Saturday, and the high school teacher was helping him because if he could get done with his work, his dad would allow him to go to school on Monday. And an interesting thing about that day, he said he looked across the road, he saw activity, and there in the Cagle house, Oscar Tate from Irving College was moving in that day with a wagon. So I know exactly when Oscar Tate moved to Beersheba Springs. Thought that was quite interesting.
And I believe that Cagle house is what is now called the Eddie Brown house.
No, sir, it's the one right below the Eddie Brown house.
Okay.
The one closest to the post office,
Okay.
the current post office location. When I was born, it was difficult for country people to make it into town to a hospital. So there was a local woman whose name was Carrie Tate. She was a sister to the famed historical postmaster Claude Coppinger. She was married to Uncle Vic Tate. And you know, a thing funny about Aunt Carrie, unusual about Aunt Carrie, she traveled around the area delivering babies, and women would have false labor pains, and Aunt Carrie would arrive and determine that it was false, but knowing that it might happen right away, she brought her clothes with her and she just stayed with them until it did happen. And the funny thing about that is that Aunt Carrie found time while delivering other people's babies to bear 14 of her own. And listen, they didn't die in infancy like so many children did back in that era. She raised all 14 of them into adult life. They're all passed away now, but I knew half or more of them. My sister also was born over in the panhandle of Beersheba Springs. That area is now called the Stone Door area because of the significance of the road leading to the Stone Door Park. We lived over there until probably 1941.
Were you right on the what's now the Stone Door Road?
Yes, sir. The house set just maybe not even 100 yards off of the Stone Door Road, right where the 1a Avenue that goes down through, right where it comes back and intersects the Stone Door Road. Out in that field right there, there was a house. I think there's a mobile home or something sitting over there now. We didn't have water nor electricity at that place, and we moved from there to town, downtown Beersheba Springs, about 1941, to a little two-room house that my grandfather Hill owned. He owned that house where I was born also. And in that little house, we did not have water or electricity. It was a log room, a great big one with a little lean-to on the back that we used for a kitchen and dining area. And of course, as I stated, an outdoor toilet. Some super giant cherry trees in the yard. I'll tell you, the cherries would just be just nearly breaking the limbs down. I don't know why that it's the seasons have changed or something, and cherries are not that easy to, are likely to grow on the mountain now, but they did then. People would climb those trees and stand on ladders and everything to pick cherries. Well, about
Now, exactly where was that house?
it was located about 200 feet from where the U.S. Post Office sits now on Highway 56. And right where the post office sits, my grandfather Hill had a huge barn. He farmed, and he had all kinds of farming equipment that was horse-drawn, and it was a huge barn that he kept his cattle in, and kept his mules in, and we left Beersheba Springs about sometime in 1942. Now, I don't remember clearly the day that we left Beersheba Springs to move to Nashville, although I have a memory date that goes back before we left Beersheba Springs, which was likely in February of 1942. And I'll tell you what that memory is. About a real long city block, or two short city blocks from where we lived, there was a house where the Frank Smith family lives. The house is still standing, and it's across the road from where the blue collar barber shop is. I heard screaming taking place. Never in my life had I heard before or since such noise. And it was women screaming. And I did not know why, but I found out a short time later that their brother, Frank and Nellie Smith's son, Frank Bud Smith, whose memorial stone is at the Grace Chapel Cemetery, dated February the 18th, 1942 as a date of his death, and this probably was later in that month or in early March. Officers had come to report to the family that their son was lost at sea on a ship called the USS Truxtun off the coast of Newfoundland. He was the first casualty of World War II from Grundy County. You know, ironically, the memorial stone down at the tiny Grace Chapel Cemetery of Frank Bud Smith sits in the midst of some other veterans' stones. One was Willie Dan Brown, veteran of World War I, and then Frank Bud Smith from World War II, Herschel Tate from the Korean War, and Raymond Eubanks Jr. from the Vietnam War. So Beersheba, small as it is,